One thing that I want to kind of shift gears on is something that the last time you and I chatted, obviously you have a interest in UFOs and you have a kind of a thirst for the truth. You know, what is out there, what is real, what is not. And in the last month or so, however long it's been, I forget the exact date, but the Wilson memo leak that came out obviously starts touching on SAPs and special access programs, and essentially what you've been dissecting here for the last 40 minutes or so. I assume the answer is yes, but I think you've looked into these memos, correct?
Yes, that is correct. I have, and it's particularly because, like you said, somebody asked me, was the Wilson memos what inspired me to look in SAPs, and that's not true. However, indeed, these Wilson memos are, they center around these special access programs. That is the crux of what they're discussing. So, yeah. I did take a look at them.
So you looked at them. Let the audience, for those who have no idea what we might be talking about, can you just give a brief overview of what the heck these leaked documents are?
Sure. Yeah, these are documents that are allegedly, and I say allegedly because I will say right up front, I don't know what the provenance of them or the credibility of them are. Are they real or not? I don't know. Although, as we'll get into, even if they are real, they're could not be as exciting as people think. But these are supposedly a set of notes that was either leaked, taken. I believe it may have come out that they came from the archive notes of the late Edgar Mitchell, between a meeting between Eric Davis, Dr. Eric Davis, who is with Earth Tech International, with Hal Puthoff. He's been involved in NIDS, involved in this kind of topic arena for a while. And Admiral Thomas Wilson, who was had a lengthy military career with the Navy, but ultimately was the deputy director and then eventually the director of the Defense Intelligence Agency up until 2002. And so this is supposedly a meeting between the two of them that pertains to Wilson while as the deputy director or director, I believe it was the deputy director of the DIA, his pursuit to try to uncover a special access or multiple special access programs that were involved in the reverse engineering or involved in extraterrestrial technology that had been captured, seized, whatever the case may be. That is the crux of these memos, and so they appear to be, if they were authentic, they're Dr. Davis's transcription of their conversation that day.
When you first saw these records and they appeared online, I was I laughed because it was so convenient for the timing of them. When you look at who was involved, what was kind of hitting the headlines at the time. We may get into that later, but I'm curious more of your thoughts on when you saw them first. Take away the knowledge that you have, extensive knowledge of SAPs and really kind of digging in. Did you think they were real, fake, or weren't sure?
I would say my initial opinion is they weren't real. Yeah, I didn't think that they were real documents, and I think some of that may be biased by some of the information that came out, how they came about. I mean, there was some information that some individuals may have had these documents in their possession for 8 months or a year before releasing to the public, and so I still ask and wonder, and I have reached out to some of the people who have made those claims, and they won't answer for me. Why wait that long? I believe that the answer that's been publicly provided is they waited that long in order to verify their authenticity. But if that is indeed the case, I have yet to see anybody provide any verification of authenticity other than I verified them and yes, they're true. But the supporting documents that verifies or that establishes how they verified that I haven't seen.
Yeah.
So, and I believe Dr. Davis has been reached out to, and he has declined to make comment.
Yeah, That again makes me laugh just because I don't, if they're real, let's just say it, let's just get it out on the table. It should be noted that the Wilson story has been around a little bit. We did see a prominent figure in the UFO field that we haven't seen in a while, controversial to say the least, but Dr. Stephen Greer kind of resurfaced after these things came about. He was the one that kind of surfaced the Wilson the Wilson story, I should say. Billy Cox, a journalist from Florida. I really like Billy. I've known Billy a long, long time. And I recall that he did an article, reached out to Wilson, and Wilson said, no, that obviously never took place. The Eric Davis comment, obviously no comment. So now it's like, okay, so here yet again, we have a document in the UFO field that we just have no provenance of. We have no authenticity to support other than, some guesses. I have seen some in the UFO field just talk about how this is absolute truth, that this is undeniable. Now, you've approached this, I think, in a little bit of a different way because you have knowledge that really not many people have. I mean, again, for all of those who haven't seen it, and I will link it in the YouTube channel if it's not there already. I believe I did. I'm sorry, I can't check on the fly here, but I believe it's in the description. If not, I'll make sure it is after the live stream. But check out Tim's article on special access programs because what we dealt with is very much just the tip of the iceberg. So how you approached it is with knowledge and a background that, again, not many people go into, meaning that they don't have the expertise on SAPs and so on that you do. So let's get into the content themselves. Did you start challenging what you were reading in these notes and kind of understanding, okay, I know for a fact SAPs work like this. Do the notes support reality or are they way off?
Well, and you're absolutely right. Two things when I went through them. One was the knowledge of the kind of the SAPS program being fresh on there, and the other side of it is that I can't help the fact, and I may have discussed this last time we spoke, John, that my background for a part of what I did in law enforcement, I was certified in behavioral analyst work, criminal investigative analyst, and so my background academically is in psychology. And so from a behavioral standpoint, I always scrutinize these types of things to see if the behavior is even consistent with the already inherently inconsistent way human beings behave. Mm-hmm. And so, one of the things that you touched on is here we have another document that no provenance can be established. And it's one of these ones you either believe it or don't. It's a document of belief. You have to decide whether you believe it or believe it. There's a considerable number of things that are in it that really just play right into that trope, including the fact that from the onset I noticed that this meeting was supposedly took place at October 2002. Hugely convenient because Admiral Thomas Wilson had retired from the Navy and as the director of the DIA roughly 2 months prior to this. And so whereas had he still been in the federal government, we might have been able to FOIA some information such as an executive calendar or something that would have some supporting document that he was even in Las Vegas at the time, because this meeting supposedly took place, right out of a spy movie, behind the Special Projects building of EG&G. For those who don't know, and especially the Special Projects building there outside of McCarran Airport, that's the contractor who was running the Janet Air flights at the time. They have since been purchased by URS, and in fact, EG&G no longer exists. United Research Services does, and in fact, at October 2002, they had been purchased a couple months prior. But they're meeting behind this building, and it's really convenient. It's exciting. With that said, before we get into the SAP stuff, I will say it was interesting that I noticed very early on. To me, there was a lot of telling information. Is that in the notes, it describes Dr. Davis allegedly saying to go to the Special Projects building, which is at Greer and Paradise. That would lead me to believe, if I had to speculate there, that whoever wrote them, which Dr. Davis indeed does have has spent considerable time living in around the Las Vegas area, but somebody is familiar with the area because it's actually not at Greer and Paradise. It's right there by the access road that goes into the McCarran Airport, which curves around past the Sunset Strip. It's just south of there. It does go into Paradise Road once you get into Paradise, Nevada, which is where the actual airport is. However, that road is not technically Paradise. So if you're going to make that up and look at a map, you probably would have used that road. I believe it's called like McCarran International Airport freeway, something to that effect.
Okay.
But either way, you probably wouldn't use Paradise, and so that was interesting to me.
So you're saying there's a kind of a nugget of truth there?
There's a nugget from a behavioral analyst standpoint that I would say is a detail that would be included by someone who's familiar with the Las Vegas area,
okay,
and therefore would be more inept to use the common colloquial. That road is probably called Paradise, okay, amongst colloquial. But if you were I who are not in Vegas, or if we've not frequented the area and we just pulled up a map and we went, oh, okay, we knew that the EG&G Special Projects building is right there. It's telling me the corner right there, Greer Road, 811 Greer Road. I hope URS doesn't get mad about me telling that. Then we probably would. It would be hard pressed to pick out Paradise, gotcha, unless you knew. Okay. That was enough that I thought was just interesting. It doesn't mean anything other than whoever wrote it.
There was a little bit of knowledge there.
Familiar.
Okay.
Yeah, probably familiar with the area.
All right.
Okay. Going through there, there's a considerable number of names being dropped and everything, and they're all former, people. It makes it hard to corroborate type thing. But indeed, the crux of it gets into the whole, really the SAP process, and a lot of what the article that I was dealing with. And it has to do with Admiral Wilson wanting to try to find access to a special access program that is potentially dealing with alien technology, extraterrestrial technology. And so, these notes detail the conversation back and forth where Dr. Vegas and Admiral Wilson allegedly are talking about his pursuit in finding this information out, in which he finds through some interesting budget documents out of the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense, Acquisitions and Technology, where this potential program would be.
Okay.
There's another little nugget in there, and it comes from when it's being discussed with the Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisitions and Technology and the SAP Oversight Committee, and it comes from the fact when they mention actually specifically Brigadier General Mike Kostek. It mentions him, being both the Executive Secretary of the SAP Oversight Committee, but also the Director of the SAP Coordination Office. Initially, when I saw that, I thought, that's a little interesting, because there is no such place as the SAP Coordination Office. It's the SAP Central Office, and each component has a SAP Central Office, and each office in the Undersecretary of Defense has one.
Okay.
And so I did some searching, because that term, I said, I just got done reading hundreds of pages of manuals. That name doesn't come up. But I did find in 1994 some memos that have to deal with General Gostick, and they mentioned this SAP Coordination Office with him. Indeed. In fact, a lot of the names and details from the SAP Oversight Committee matched well with this. This was a SAP Oversight Committee bulletin published in 1994. Was able to find it through Stephen Aftergood's site, the Federation for American Scientists.
Mm-hmm.
Great resource. And then through that, and having to go back, because that's the one thing, is it's hard to find old policies, that indeed during the early to mid 90s, and possibly up to 2013, I'm not sure when it changed, there was a SAP coordination office in the SAP Oversight Committee. And so this was a matrix of 3 OSD level SAP central offices.
Okay.
Acquisition, intelligence, operations, and support. And they helped coordinate SAPs for the Oversight Committee. Confused yet?
Yeah, a little
bit. It is. It's a confusing process. I guess the point of saying all of that is that it did exist. It is an interesting detail because, again, if you're going to hoax it, you got to do a little work. You got to do a little work to find that.
Yeah,
Since it's
I mean,
an
it sounds like
policy.
it sounds like there was a lot of work put into this. If it's a hoax, I mean, I lean towards it is. It sounds like you might lean towards it is, but not to speak for you. But there's a lot of truth. Like, so somebody had a little bit of knowledge behind what they were putting on these notes, whether or not Eric Davis wrote them originally or there was truth to the notes. But somebody obviously knew a little bit about what they were talking about.
Sure. And in fact, that's the components that are being named in the different areas with the SAP, the different programs of different components of a special access program. When they're talking about the SAP Oversight Committee, when they're talking about the Senior Review Group, which provides principal support to the Oversight Committee, that's all accurate. That is all part of the programs, and those are all obscure little intricacies that are in this program and process. So yeah, somebody would have had to put in a little bit of work for it. And then when allegedly Admiral Wilson says, that there was no budget info kept on these particular programs he was seeking, well, then that would, they were separate for records for auditing purposes. That would tell us that if this was real, it was a unacknowledged, though potentially waived unacknowledged SAP. So it's not a knowledge SAP, but I think we probably could have guessed that one. You didn't need me to tell you that one, because if there was an acknowledged SAP like the B-21 bomber that had to do with alien technology, that might be a big deal.
Interesting. So I asked you when you first saw the documents, how you felt and what your ideas were. I believe the chronology was you saw them first, had those thoughts, did all the research on SAP, learned a lot more, then started revisiting. You found some pretty interesting things that I've never heard others talk about. So kudos to you for really digging into those details, although I haven't listened to everybody's thoughts on the Wilson memo. That's a lot of hard work that you're doing there. So now fast forward from the beginning in your thoughts to now the knowledge that you have of SAPs and kind of revisiting the memos, if you will. Any chance they're real, do you think?
Well, there's a chance of anything. If you want me to give you my opinion, which I know a lot of times people don't want to do, but I will caveat it as is just my opinion. I think there's aspects of them that make me think that they are inaccurate. Mm-hmm. Now, what I mean by inaccurate, that's not saying that somebody has purposely hoaxed them. Could they have been written by Dr. Davis? Maybe. Could he have been told this stuff? Anything's possible. I don't know, but I will say there's elements within them that aren't accurate. Namely, when it goes into Dr. Davis actually Admiral Wilson supposedly trying to get into this program that has potentially crashed alien technology, being told, there's no access whatsoever. And I believe he's even shown the bigoted list as it goes into, and it says that there's no president, there's no White House names, there's no congressional people, no congressional staffers. Again, we talked about how crazy wave SAPs are. And so can I tell you that there wouldn't be congressional staff people on there? I can't tell you that. But the president not being on there, first of all, the president doesn't need to be on a bigoted list. He automatically has it. Secondly, it goes into saying that that some sort of deal has been struck with the Oversight Committee, in which it is a complete government carve-out, and that no U.S. government employees are allowed access whatsoever. Well, we're not talking about a SAP anymore. We're not talking about one that you're going to find budget line items in the U.S. government with and all this kind of stuff. You're talking about a private company. Or you're talking about an illegal operation that, we can only speculate, but what is the benefit for the government there?
Yeah.
They're paying money to fund it. What is the benefit? Because if you're not going to let them have access. And so, but then the memo kind of contradicts itself and begins to list government people who are on the, quote, bigoted list, which mean they have access. So There's kind of this weird ending to where there's a lot of different contradictory elements there, where it's a scary government carve out, and taxpayers are funding what appears to be a private cabal dark program with no government access. But then here's all these government people who may have information about it, and obviously government people had information about it, because how would Admiral Wilson have found it?
Yeah.
And so,
no, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, that part right there, I would say, is just inaccurate. The other side that I say is just illogical, in my opinion, is there's a part where they refuse to let, supposedly this SAP refuses to let Admiral Wilson to have access with it because he's not on the bigoted list. Mm-hmm. So he shouldn't have been shown the bigoted list. He shouldn't know who has access because he's not a part of it. But then they proceed to go on and tell him what's in the program to a degree. That's not how.
That's not how it works.
That's not how it works.
Okay.
And lastly, most importantly, the director or deputy director of the Defense Intelligence Agency, and this is the most important part. Everything else is conjecture. Probably should have led with this. My bad, John. Is that the deputy director of the Defense Intelligence says he doesn't have inherent access to a unacknowledged or SAP that's not out of the component office of the Defense Intelligence Agency. In that memo, they say that it is the budgets are coming out of the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense, Acquisitions and Technology. Well, then that is an Acquisitions and Technology SAP. The Defense Intelligence Agency would not have a component office in it. It would only, at a maximum, provide intelligence or counterintelligence support to an acquisition SAP. And therefore, the idea that Admiral Wilson would try to seek out the SAP or get mad doesn't make sense, because he has no regulatory authority over an OSUDI SAP, an unacknowledged SAP. He wouldn't convene the senior review group or the SAP oversight committee. He doesn't have access to that. The current director of the DIA doesn't have access to SAPs that aren't within their purview. And so the regulatory authority there, the memo tries to kind of, I think, Dr. Davis supposedly tries to clarify it by saying why, something to the effect of, why are you mad? Do you have regulatory authority because the money budget is coming out of the DIA budget? Mm-hmm. And core secret, won't answer. But again, so if it's not coming out of a DIA component office, it's like, it'd be like him going to McDonald's trying to order Burger King. Yeah, he doesn't have access to it, and he would know that. He's a career military official, director or deputy director of the DIA. He knows that before he goes to meet with these people. So bottom line, then, are you walking away that I know you said anything's possible, but just to kind of get a bottom line of where you're at with them, you solidified that they're a hoax, or leaning towards, I should say, or are you still on the fence, like a bottom line after it's all said and done? A bottom line is all the information that I have seen access to, I do not believe that they are authentic or they're accurate depiction of real events. Okay. With that said, I've reached out to Dr. Davis. I've reached out to several of the people who said they verified it. I'm more than willing to listen. So I'm not sitting here trying to be a quote debunker. I can only go with the evidence that's given. and so if anybody would like to share some information or say how they know that this is an accurate event or that this is definitely true, man, I'm all for it. And I will be more than glad to call you back up and demand you let me back on. Well, anytime you want to demand, you're definitely back on. I think there's another interesting aspect to this that we don't have to get into now, but I think it's the players involved. It's who was, let's say the notes are real. The content aside, if the notes are real, who were they being
written for, and what was kind of the kickback? Were they justifying why they were maybe getting a paycheck or so on? And I know that that sounds conspiratorial and silly, but I think that that is really an aspect to these stories where we see a lot of the same names and we see a lot of the same figures that have appeared over the last 5, 10, 15 plus years that are making money, that they're involved in organizations with corporations and so on, that, you know, we have to look at that. A lot of people don't want to, but we have to look at that as potential motivation to craft these notes and say, look, this is what I'm doing for you. This is what I'm involved in. That justifies my paycheck. I'm not making that accusation, but I think that we definitely have to consider that as a possibility for, you know, these types of leaks. To say no comment for Dr. Davis, I think is silly. Either just answer, I mean, obviously you were pretty careless with the notes if they're real. So now it's time to just kind of fess up and get over it. If they're fabricated by somebody who's looking to get their name back in the game, all right, well, let's go on the record. But the no comment thing, I think is kind of silly.